Hello and welcome back to Poetry Corner. Got a slightly different poem for you today, a little bit longer but not up to Chesterton's length. It's Robert Browning's poem Rabi ben Ezra. Now normally I would do the poem and then give some reflections on it. I think in this case it's helpful to give a bit of an introduction, not least because Browning's style is not always the easiest to understand, and this poem is a bit of an unusual one even for him. The poem, of course, takes its name from a Jewish figure, Rabi ben Ezra, son of Ezra, and it's on the theme of the passage of life, growing old, and how we respond to it. I very much suspect, although I can't prove it, that it's a response to another poem, which was Fitzgerald's translation of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. Don't worry if you're not familiar with that one, but it made a big impact at the time. It was a translation of a Persian poet. And that was a poem, a very fatalistic, cynical poem, in quite an unusual metre, that was basically carrying the theme of life is out of our control and it's quick and fleeting, so enjoy yourself now while you can. 'Tis all a checkerboard of nights and days, where destiny with men as pieces plays, draws this one out and lifts it up or slays, then one by one back in the closet lays. This is this image of an impersonal destiny playing with our lives. And he particularly develops the idea of, this is still Fitzgerald in his poem, Fitzgerald particularly develops the idea of the human life as being like an earthenware pot. He describes going into a potter's shop and well, I remember stopping by the way to see a potter thumbing the wet clay that's shaping it on the potter's wheel. And with its all obliterated tongue, it whispered, "Gently, brother, gently pray." Then to the lip of that poor earthen urn I leaned, the secret of this life to learn. And with a joy and scratchy voice it said, "Drink, for once dead you never shall return." This poem of Fitzgerald's, which was hugely popular, drawing on the Persian tradition, was basically all about life is meaningless, it's all the play of destiny and chance, we can't control anything and life will go soon, so at least have a good time, drink, for once dead you never shall return. I suspect that Rabi ben Ezra, drawing on the Jewish tradition, is Browning's response and a counterblast. I think he is trying to counter the message of Fitzgerald's poem by giving us this poem, which is a discussion of the value and importance of earthly life, and why it is anything but insignificant, and why we should make the most of it, not to enjoy ourselves as much as possible before it's snatched away, but to shape ourselves into the kind of person we want to be found to be in eternity. So without any more ado, have a listen to the poem, and then I'll give a few more reflections on it. Rabi ben Ezra by Robert Browning. Grow old along with me, the best is yet to be, the last of life for which the first was made. Our times are in his hand who saith, "A whole I planned, youth shows but half, trust God, see all nor be afraid." Not that, amassing flowers, youth sighed, "Which rose make ours, which lily leave, and then as best recall?" Not that, admiring stars, it yearned, "Nor Jove nor Mars, mine be some figured flame which blends, transcends them all." Not for such hopes and fears, annulling youth's brief years, do I remonstrate. Folly wide the mark. Rather I prize the doubt low kinds exist without, finished and finite clods, untroubled by a spark. Poor vaunt of life indeed, were man but formed to feed on joy, to solely seek and find and feast. Such feasted ended then as sure an end to men. Irks care the cropful bird, frets doubt the more crammed beast. Rejoice, we are allied to that which doth provide and not partake, affect and not receive. A spark disturbs our clod, nearer we hold of God who gives, than of his tribes that take, I must believe. Then Welcome each rebuff that turns earth's smoothness rough, each sting that bids not sit nor stand but go. Be our joy 3 parts pain, strive and hold cheap the strain. Learn nor account the pang, dare never grudge the throe. For thence, a paradox which comforts while it mocks, shall life succeed in that it seems to fail. What I aspired to be and was not, comforts me. A brute I might have been, but would not sink i' the scale. What is he but a brute whose flesh has soul to suit, whose spirit works lest arms and legs want play? To man propose this test. Thy body at its best, how far can that project thy soul on its lone way? Yet gifts should prove their use. I earn the past profuse of power each side, perfection every turn. Eyes, ears took in their dole, brain treasured up the whole. Should not the heart beat once? How good to live and learn! Not once beat, praise be thine, I see the whole design. I who saw power see now love perfect too. Perfect I call thy plan, thanks that I was a man. Master, remake, complete, I trust what thou shalt do. For pleasant is this flesh, our soul in its rose mesh, pulled ever to the earth, still yearns for rest. Would we some prize might hold to match those manifold possessions of the brute, gain most as we did best. Let us not always say, spite of this flesh, today I strove, made head, gained ground upon the whole. As the bird wings and sings, let us cry, all good things are ours, nor soul helps flesh more now than flesh helps soul. Therefore I summon age to grant youth's heritage, life's struggle having so far reached its term. Thence shall I pass, approved, a man, for I removed from the developed brute, a god though in the germ. And I shall thereupon take rest ere I be gone, once more on my adventures brave and new, fearless and unperplexed when I wage battle next, what weapons to select, what armour to endue. Youth ended, I shall try my gain or loss thereby. Leave the fire ashes, what survives is gold. And I shall weigh the same, give life its praise or blame. Young, all lay in dispute, I shall know being old. For note, when evening shuts, a certain moment cuts the deed off, calls the glory from the grey. A whisper from the west shoots, add this to the rest, take it and try its worth. Here dies another day. So, still within this life, though lifted o'er its strife, let me discern, compare, pronounce at last. This rage was right in the main, that acquiescence vain. The future I may face now I have proved the past. For more is not reserved to man, with soul just nerved, to act tomorrow what he learns today. Here, work enough to watch the master work, and catch hints of the proper craft, tricks of the tool's true play. As it was better youth should strive, through acts uncouth, toward making, than repose on aught found made. So, better age, exempt from strife, should know, than tempt further. Thou waitedst age, wait death, nor be afraid. Enough now if the right and good and infinite be named here, as thou call'st thine hand thine own, with knowledge absolute, subject to no dispute from fools that crowded youth, nor let thee feel alone. Be there, for once and all, severed great minds from small, announce to each his station in the past. Was I, the world arraigned? Were they, my soul disdained, right? Let age speak the truth, and give us peace at last. Now who shall arbitrate? 10 men love what I hate, shun what I follow, slight what I receive. 10 who in ears and eyes match me. We all surmise, they this thing, and I that. Whom shall my soul believe? Not on the vulgar mass called work must sentence pass, things done that took the eye and had the price, o'er which from level stand the low world laid its hand, found straightway its mind, could value in a trice. But all the world's coarse thumb and finger failed to plumb, so past in making up the main account. All instincts immature, all purposes unsure, that weighed not as his work, yet swelled the man's account. Thought, hardly to be packed into a narrow act, fancies that broke through language and escaped, all I could never be, all men ignored in me, this I was worth to God, whose wheel the picture shaped. I note that potter's wheel, that metaphor, and feel why time spins fast, why passive lies our clay. Thou to whom fools propound when the wine makes its round, since time fleets all is change, the past gone, seize today. Fool, all that is at all lasts ever past recall. Earth changes, but thy soul and God stand sure. What entered into thee, that was, is, and shall be. Time's wheel runs back or stops. Potter and clay endure. He fixedly amidst this dance of plastic circumstance, this present thou forsooth wouldst fain arrest. Machinery, just meant to give thy soul its bent. Try thee and turn thee forth, sufficiently impressed. What though the earlier grooves that ran the laughing loves around thy base no longer pause and press? What though about thy rim skull things in order grim grow out in graver mood, obey a sterner stress? Look thou not down, but up, to uses of a cup, to festal board lamps flash and trumpets peal, the new wine's foaming flow, the master's lips aglow. Thou, heaven's consummate cup, what needst thou with earth's wheel? But I need, now as then, thee, God, who mouldest men, and since not even while the world was worse did I, to the wheel of life with shapes and colours rife bound dizzily, mistake my end to slake thy thirst, so take and use thy work, amend what flaws may lurk, what strain of the stuff, what warpings past the aim. My times be in thy hand, perfect the cup as planned, let age approve of youth, and death complete the same. Well, I hope you enjoyed that poem. I do like it, even if, as I say, it's not the most accessible of his poems. I'm not going to go through it line by line, because it's a little bit long, but I wanted to pick out a few elements of it which I think can help us enjoy it and give us something to take away. Browning's poem, as I said at the start, is fundamentally about the value of our earthly life. That's the first thing. And I think secondly, it's about not, as the first lines make clear, not viewing old age as the second best, but if anything as the best part of life. Now I feel a bit presumptuous saying this as a relatively young man, but I think that's the thrust of Browning's poem. Grow old along with me, the best is yet to be, the last of life for which the first was made. Our times are in his hand who saith, a whole I planned. Youth shows but half. Trust God, see all, nor be afraid. We tend, especially in today's world, I think, to be afraid of old age. We celebrate youth, we worship youth. We love television shows about young, attractive people. We all long to be young again, or we're encouraged to. And clearly it was like that in Browning's day as well, because he felt the need to say, no, actually, it's not necessarily that way round. Old age is not necessarily the sad aftermath of life. It can be the best of life. It can be the bit for which the youth was the necessary unpleasant prelude. Browning hits back at our tendency to value the shallow, superficial things of youth. Beauty, fitness, energy, and says, no, actually, there's a lot of value in age, but there's also a lot of value in the life you live to get to old age. Browning wants us not to be afraid of growing old, and not to be afraid of death, but to see it as the resolution and completion, the perfecting of life, and moving on to the next stage, not the end of existence, as Fitzgerald's Rabbi Ben Ezra, Rubaiyat of Khayyam did. So as we pass through the poem, we see Browning, through the voice of Rabbi Ben Ezra, remonstrating or perhaps articulating a very different vision of human life to the pleasure-orientated, enjoy yourself as much as possible while you can, vision that Fitzgerald had put together. Indeed, Browning attacks that and says, "Poor vaunt of life indeed, were man but formed to feed on joy, to solely seek and find and feast. Such feasting ended then as sure an end to men. Irks care the crop-full bird, frets doubt the more crammed beast." In other words, he's saying we'd be pretty sorry creatures if we only existed for pleasure. We only existed to try and grab as much enjoyment now as possible, because that's how the animals live. And if that were true, then as soon as our earthly enjoyment ceased, well, that would be an end of us. But instead, Browning says, "Rejoice, we are allied to that which doth provide and not partake, affect and not receive. A spark disturbs our clod. Nearer we hold of God who gives than of his tribes that take, I must believe." In other words, be glad we're not just living our lives in bovine satisfaction with food and drink, where if we are dissatisfied sometimes with our lives, it's because we are made for something more, we are made of something more. We are not just the dust of the earth, satisfied with the things of the earth until we return to the earth. We are also the breath of God, and therefore we long for more, we yearn for more, and that is a promise that we can be more, and indeed that we are made to be more than just beasts that eat our fill and die. Therefore, he says, "Welcome each rebuff that turns earth's smoothness rough, each sting that bids not sit nor stand but go." In other words, Browning says, be thankful for everything in life that gives you a kick up the backside, that stops you just sitting there comfortably, never growing, never developing, never learning. Welcome the uncomfortable, awkward, inconvenient things that turn earth's smoothness rough and bid not sit nor stand but go, that make you change, get up, go, do stuff and grow. Welcome the things that help you become something more than you were, not just be content with who you are. There's a lot more in that strain that we could pick up on. But Browning moves on from there, I think, to emphasize the goodness, therefore, of old age, because it is able to look back on this period of growth, to see how much one has grown, to digest the lessons of youth, and therefore keep growing. Thus he says, "Therefore I summon age to grant youth's heritage, life's struggle having so far reached its term. Thence shall I pass, approved, a man for aye removed from the developed brute, a god though in the germ." In other words, he's saying age is at once the fulfillment of youth and the necessary step to passing on to being something more, passing on through the doors of death to be something more. Age looks back on youth, learns its lessons, and so grows and develops into something more than the brute, the animal that lives for earthly things. So Browning reflects quite enthusiastically on how, getting to the end of age, he will look back and assess it, what he got right, what he got wrong, digest it and learn from it. Again, there's a lot I could say there, but I don't want this video to take forever. Instead, I want to zoom in on the third and final section of the poem, which is emphasizing the value of our earthly life because of what it made us. We tend to view the value of an earthly life either by our experience, how much we had fun, or by our achievement, what we did. But the big overarching message of this poem is that we're not just temporary beings. We don't just exist for this earthly life. Rather, this earthly life is about making us what we will be in eternity. And therefore, everything that shapes us in earth has value. Thoughts hardly to be packed into a narrow act, fancies that broke through language and escaped, all I could never be, all men ignored in me. This I was worth to God, whose wheel the pitcher shaped, whose wheel shaped the cup or the glass he was making. In other words, he's saying everything that went into making me who I am today is worthwhile to God, because it all helped shape me, even the bits nobody saw or knew about, the daydreams that never got spoken, the things I could never find the words to say, the dreams I never got to live. They're not empty, they're not worthless, they're not lost or forgotten, because they helped make me who I am today. They were valuable to God because they were all part of his tools in shaping me into this. And then Browning follows on that metaphor with, I think, quite a clear cocking the snook at Fitzgerald, and says, I note that potter's wheel, that metaphor, and feel why time spins fast, why passive lies our clay. Thou to whom fools propound when the wine makes its round, since time fleets all is change, the past gone sees today. Fool, all that is at all lasts ever past recall. Earth changes, but your soul and God stand sure. What entered into thee, that was, is, and shall be. Time's wheel runs back or stops. Potter and clay endure. Now again, that's quite a packed pair of verses, but what he's basically saying is, yes, look at that image of the potter shaping the pot, but don't think it's an image of the worthlessness and emptiness and transitory nature of the human life. Think of it as time which rushes past us, the time of our lives which pass so quick, like the rapidly spinning potter's wheel, because God is using our time on earth to shape us into something that will last forever. We think that the things of earth last forever and our little lives come and go. But Browning believed, as Christians believe, all Christians believe, that human beings have the potential to be eternal, to last forever, to last when the mountains have crumbled and the seas have dried and the sun has cooled. In other words, your little life is making you something that will last beyond anything in this world. Who you become will stand in eternity. Time's wheel runs back or stops, but the potter and clay endure. We're not like a clay pot that crumbles. We're like a pot like a Ming vase that stands for thousands of years when all around it has gone. And that means that everything in our lives is making us something eternal. God fixedly amidst this dance of plastic circumstance that's shaping things around us, circumstances around us that shape us. This present thou, forsooth, wouldst fain arrest. Machinery, just meant to give thy soul its bent. Try thee and turn thee forth, sufficiently impressed. In other words, all the circumstances of our lives are there to shape us into the shape God wants us to be. Don't wish you could stop time and stay forever young. The passage of time and the passage of an earthly life is all a necessary part of the process in shaping us from a squishy blob of clay into a beautiful vase that will last forever. And therefore, what though the earlier grooves which ran the laughing loves around thy base no longer pause and press? What though about thy rim skull things in order grim grow out in graver mood, obey the sterner stress? In other words, never mind the fact that maybe life isn't as fun as it was once. Some of the good things, the laughing loves, have gone, and some harder things, skull things in order grim, and the prospect of death has come in. He says, don't worry about that. That's just because love has done its part in shaping you, and now it's the part of skull things, of the prospect of death. Now is the time for hard things to shape you. But don't let that bother you. Look thou not down, but up, to uses of a cup. The festal board lamps flash and trumpets peal. The new wine's foaming flow. The master's lips aglow. Thou heaven's consummate cup, what needs thou of earth's wheel? In other words, the cup, the pot, spends a few moments being pinched and squeezed and scraped into shape on the spinning wheel, and then thousands of years being used to delight the master for whom it was made. We spend a tiny time on earth, and sometimes we're squeezed and shaped in comfortable ways and sometimes in uncomfortable, but don't obsess about that. Keep your eyes on what you're being made to be. A vessel for the feast of God, an eternal part of the glory of heaven. When you pass through the final doors, it will be as heaven's consummate, heaven's completed cup. So don't fret about the wheel where it pinches. Look to what you're going to become, because what you become in life echoes in eternity. And so Browning's final words, so take and use your work, addressed to God. Amend what flaws may lurk, what strain of the stuff, what warpings past the aim. My times be in thy hand, perfect the cup as planned. Let age approve of youth, and death complete the same. Browning's trying to encapsulate there a view on our earthly life that says, not I have to grab as much fun as possible before it's taken away and I disappear, but life is God shaping us into something eternal. So Lord, take my life and use it to make me what you want me to be. Fix what's broken, what's gone wrong, amend what flaws may lurk, but perfect the cup as planned. Make me who you want me to be for eternity. Let age approve of youth, and death complete the same. Our younger days and our older days are all a part of that process of making us the cup. So don't fixate on the part of the process you liked or disliked, because pretty quickly the end of the process will come and the cup will be complete. Death is not the end of our story, it's the completion of it. It's the conclusion of our period of pinching and squeezing and shaping on the spinning wheel. And it's the kiln, the furnace, from which we emerge to take our eternal place and our eternal form. So don't fear death. It's not the end of your story, rather it's the completion of the shaping phase and the beginning of being what you were made to be. Don't run in fear from age. It's part of the process. It can be a good part of the process, but it's also, even in its uncomfortable elements, a necessary part of God squeezing and shaping and trimming you into what he wants you to be for eternity. And above all, don't view this life, this earthly life, as the whole of your existence, that you have to stuff with as much as possible for fear of missing out. This life is not for good things, primarily. It's nice when they come. But this life is about becoming who we're going to be for eternity. So don't worry about grabbing all you can now. Don't be afraid of the pinches of the spinning wheel. It's all to shape you for an eternal existence, because earth changes, but your soul and God stand sure. Amen.